Welcome to our new discovery, friends. Our topic today will be the lost civilization Atlantis. Before starting the video, if you take 2 seconds to reach our 1,000-person subscriber target and subscribe, it will motivate us a lot. Thanks in advance. Atlantis, the lost continent under the waters, and its mysterious story. Actually, it all started with a priest. Yes, that's exactly how it happened. Moreover, the topic of how this story, which dates back to Plato and even Ataturk, reached the present day is more interesting. And the lost continent of Atlantis and its mysterious story became the subject of this article. In this context, we have tried to give the story from the window of occultism. After all, the biggest contributor to the popularity of Atlantis was the comments put forward by those who looked through this window. On the other hand, not content with this, we also tried to present the scientific point of view about the lost continent of Atlantis. In this last paragraph of the introduction to the story of our pasture, we leave you alone with the mysterious rumors of our story. And here is the high civilization that allegedly sank with its magnificent mystery: Atlantis. Atlantis. The story of the lost continent begins with what a priest tells. A conversation that took place many years ago, even many years ago, is the beginning of this interesting story to reach today. The parties to this conversation are an Egyptian cleric, monk/priest, and the famous Greek poet Solon. In a conversation that started between the two, the topic comes to Atlantis. December. The priest tells the poet Solon and the story, and it is not known if he thought that by doing this, such a rumor could reach thousands of years beyond. In essence, after this conversation, Solon tells the story to Dropides. Dropides also passes this story on to his grandson, the Athenian statesman Critias. Now hold on tight, because Critias announces this story, which he heard from his grandfather, in a conversation at Socrates' house. Besides, we remember his name from the defense of Socrates. By the way, another important point is that Critias is the great descendant of the famous philosopher Plato. One of the first important references we know about the legend of Atlantis is the notes Plato gave us. It is between such a duo that the conversation that took place in Egypt begins to spread in Athens. December. Plato, who wrote down what he heard from his grandfather Critias, told this story dated to the century M.330 BC, managed to bring it to us thanks to the dialogues in his works, which he named Timaeus and Critias. The Atlantis in Plato's dialogues is much different. Today, we can see that the same judgments prevail in many of the conversations we have about Atlantis. Atlantis is based on a philosophy that is so beautiful that it can be utopian. This civilization is a peaceful heaven on earth. How nice that sounds, doesn't it? But Plato has an objection to this inference. As well as 2,500 years ago, according to Plato, Atlantis is not a peaceful civilization at all. Even according to our philosopher, the Atlanteans are invaders and, of course, expansionists. According to Plato, the position of Atlantis is clear. He tries to explain this clarity with the following sentences. There was a time when ships could pass for the ocean. In front of the mouth, as you Greeks say, the pillars of Heracles, i.e. Hercules, there is an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. November 16th. By the way, let's decipher. Plato means the place he described as the Pillars of Hercules, near the mouth of the Mediterranean, that is, the Strait of Gibraltar. In more general terms, this civilization is located in the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantis through the window of occultism. By saying a little predisposition to conspiracy theories, a little romantic perspective, skepticism, mysticism, the legend of Atlantis has turned into a legend that will live for thousands of years instead of being forgotten day by day. Can we say that? While the indecision about its existence or absence continues, we wanted to include what occultism says in this section. When we look from the window we are approaching from this point of view, we see that the American continent has advanced enough opportunities and a wide horizon to be aware of its existence from those times. This is the experience that we perceive and acquire in this direction. This mysterious civilization, which some sources suggest sank overnight, is an empire. Plato's dialogues, which are also positioned as a reference to these sources, convey that the Atlantean army has captured many regions of Western Europe and Africa. According to one claim, in 2011, archaeologist Richard Freund and his team discovered monument cities in Cadiz, Spain. And we've talked about this discovery of theirs a lot, because when we look at the news on the subject, these discoveries have remains that fit the image of Atlantis. Where is Spain in the Atlantis story? Cadiris is the second eldest son of the sea god Poseidon, who is from Clito of Atlantis. Our mythological figure also leaves a legacy to his 10 sons, who are from Cletio. And this legacy becomes Atlantis. After the distribution of these lands among his children, we see that Cadiris becomes a part of Spain, which decays to his share. By the way, let's remind you that Poseidon's eldest son is also Atlas. Returning to what Plato told us, there are several descriptions of water ditches, 3 according to some sources, and 5 according to others, that surround Atlantis. There is also a channel on each ditch that connects the land pieces with each other. The region owes its communication with the sea to these channels. Finally, the biography of Hermocrates, whose origin is a soldier, is also important for this story, because the story of Hermocrates, who fought against Athens in the Peloponnesian War, and what is told about Atlantis largely coincide. However, there is one thing that experts interested in this subject agree on, and that's the fact that the resources related to this issue are missing. Therefore, it is very likely that we will never find out. So is it possible? Is the legend of Atlantis real? Despite convincing arguments in popular culture, science responds negatively to this possibility. Research conducted on the subject indicates that such a place cannot sink. Even if it sinks, it can definitely be detected by now. It is stated that such a theory has been refuted, especially with the developments in marine science, oceanography, and ocean floor mapping that have developed in the last century. In addition, the accumulation of knowledge about tectonic plates also means that Atlantis cannot go further than a legend, because the shifting of countries as a result of tectonic movements and the spread of the sea floor over this wide time December also clarify the answer of the scientific world. The essence of the word is that it is clearly argued that there is no place where Atlantis can sink. Archaeologist Ken Fader, on the other hand, the words he adds to his views on this issue are also noteworthy. Fader: geology is clear. There is no place where such a large place can sink in the region where Plato placed Atlantis. In addition, modern archaeology and geology do not give us a definite judgment on this issue. In summary, there is no continent called the Atlantic, and therefore, a great civilization called Atlantis has never existed either. Plato is not the only one who vilifies Atlantis. Kagri Mert-Bakirci, the editor of the Evolutionary Tree, who has been examining the subject in the recent past, touches on the remarkable points. Professor who stands out with his works in the field of archaeology. Bakirci, who also listened to Ken Fader, drew attention to the following story in his work titled Frauds, Myths and Mysteries, Science and Pseudoscience in Archaeology. He drew attention to the following story in his work, Frauds, Myths and Mysteries, Science and Pseudoscience in Archaeology. An evil empire that is technologically advanced but morally collapsed Atlantis is trying to take over the world using force. The only obstacle facing him is a group of people who are relatively spiritually pure, morally principled and incorruptible, namely the ancient Athenians. By overcoming overwhelming differences, the Athenians managed to defeat their enemies, who are much stronger than themselves, only by the power of spirits. Does this sound familiar? Plato's Atlantic dialogues are officially the ancient Greek version of Star Wars. Finally, let's state, according to a segment that claims a part of the Atlantic is in Turkey, this possibility, which science describes as unreal and rumor, remains real for the segment that puts forward this claim. So much so that according to the famous assumption of this segment, parts of the lost continent are all over the world. For example, the Atlantic Ocean, Bolivia, Turkey, Germany, Malta, and the Caribbean are also stops of a wide geography where parts of this continent are located. So if Atlantis is not real, how do these claims keep up to date? It is suggested that the mysterious existence of Atlantis is based on the fairy tale process after Plato. The basis of the scientific perspective on the subject is clear. The details in Plato's story have been changed. However, incorrect readings also cause this situation to occur. And also, the inferences made from those readings again prepare the ground for the myth in question to remain current today. One of the references of scientists who claim that this claim is a myth is L. Sprague de Camp's book Lost Continents. In this book, you can't change all the details in Plato's story and claim to own Plato's story. It's like saying that the legendary King Arthur is actually Cleopatra. All you have to do is change Cleopatra's gender, nationality, period, Tippy. We have information about the geological structure of the Mu continent. According to the information we have obtained from these finds, there is information about the geological structure of the Mu continent. With the researches carried out, it was understood that the Mu continent covers a fairly large part of the Pacific Ocean. It has been revealed that Hawaii, Haiti, Fiji, the Easter Islands, and other Polish islands are fragments left over from the sinking of the Mu continent. In terms of supporting information to this situation, the opinions of Eric von Daniken are also important. According to Daniken, the geological structures, plant structures, and cultures of the islands, which are thousands of kilometers away from each other, are similar to the same extent. 20. According to the results obtained after deciphering the found finds, the large piece of land known as the Mu continent was a giant island continent with a length of 8,000 kilometers from east to west and 5,000 kilometers from north to south. According to the writings on the Nakal tablets, this continent is the cradle of civilization and development. However, Mu, which is thought to have a history of about 70,000 years, has also hosted many colonies and civilizations during this time. The Mu continent is not a subject on which the scientific world provides consensus. The person who first put forward the claim of the Mu continent, 19. The writer and traveler Augustus Le Plongeon lived in this century. According to him, this continent and civilization are located in the Great Ocean, and this continent had disappeared by sinking about 14,000 years ago. Le Plongeon claimed that the ancestors of the ancient Egyptian and Mesoamerican societies lived on the continent. The popularization of the subject is based on the work of James Churchward. The claim that Mu is a lost continent is rejected by a serious part of the scientific world, because according to these views, the existence of such a continent is physically impossible. On the other hand, James Bramwell and William Scott Elliott found that the cataclysmic events on Mu began 800,000 years ago, and definitively they have suggested that it continued until the last disaster, which occurred in 9564 BC. Ataturk's efforts to research the subject. The legend of Mu, which came to the ears of the great leader, attracted a lot of attention from him. In the 1930s, Ataturk became interested in Churchward's work and inclined to the theory that Mu could be the original homeland of the Turks. Masaaki Kimura claimed that the Yonaguni finds in Japan are the remains of the continent of Mu. In addition, in exchange for a large amount of money, one of the tablets found by William Niven was purchased and sent to Ataturk. It is said that the tablet in question is still kept together with Ataturk's hidden letters today. The results of the research in the form of volumes delivered to Ataturk were in the Turkish language institution until the 1970s. Currently, it is still open to visitors with the numbers 1301 and 1302 as 2 volumes in a Nitkaber library. Other work 3. The Skin is Lost. In addition, the translations made from Crutchward's books are kept in the same place as 4 volumes. More than 700 photos that Tosin Bey sent to Ataturk are also included in the Antiquity photo archive. Salih Bozok, Ataturk's aide, describes the issue in his memoirs as follows.
Gotzi was very excited when the translation of the books was made. Every day, haven't the translations finished? Why is the delegation working so slowly? He was crying. Finally, the translations are finished. The book was not printed, it was typewritten and presented to Ataturk. Gotzi read the text over and over again with great attention. He was especially interested in the chapter describing the creation. He underlined the part that says Mu continent is the homeland of humanity. The population has increased to 64 million. He was also closely interested in the concept of God mentioned in Mu and emphasized that the Creator could not be understood by the human mind. He was taking notes by comparing special nouns and adjectives originating from the Mu language with the original Turkish. According to the Akashic records, although the degree of accuracy is not proven by any scientific evidence, the famous names who have made the most detailed explanations about Atlantis so far are Edgar Cayce and Rudolf Steiner, who have given information about Atlantis based on Akashic readings. Another source is the Book of Zion, one of the ancient books of the East. Cayce and Steiner, in their statements made independently of each other, state that the human species has evolved by intensifying and solidifying, and they talk at length about two groups of opposing views fighting in Atlantis. Cayce names one of these two groups as the sons of the law of God, and the other as the sons of Belial, Satan, evil. The wars ended in favor of the sons of Belial, who age to Hercules. "You keep moving it," said. So Heracles agreed to carry him, but he wanted Atlas to hold him for a few minutes until he could put a shoulder strap on his back. As soon as Atlas took the earth, Heracles fled, and Atlas realized that he had been tricked. In some stories it is told that the thunder is the cry of Atlas to Heracles. Atlas carries the sky dome on his shoulders, not the earth. Utopia. The Irish writer Thomas More, the author of Utopia, the name of the work means place without. In Greek, More, in front of the Greek word meaning place, he introduced a syllable that conjures together the charms. EU, meaning good, and OU, meaning absent, thus making a kind of pun that means good place and absent place at the same time, that is, place without. More's book of the same name, written in 1516, is set on a fictional island that does not exist. More describes utopians and their way of life in his book. In fact, More brings a criticism of the British system of the period. The New Atlantis. The New Atlantis, written by Francis Bacon, was published after the author's death. Another point we should know about the work is that the work is an unfinished utopian Rome. In addition, the work has an interesting feature with its accidental capture. The New Atlantis was found tucked behind the Silva Silvarum, another work by Bacon. In his New Atlantis novel, Bacon depicts a vision of the future of human exploration and knowledge. By doing this, the author expresses his aspirations and ideals for humanity. The novel depicts the creation of a utopian land where generosity and enlightenment, dignity and grandeur, piety and public spirit are qualities held in common by the imaginary inhabitants of Ben Salem. The plan of the ideal college, Solomon's Foundation or Solomon's House, and its organization envision a modern research university, both in applied and pure sciences. Nakal Tablets. The Nakal Tablets are an ancient people and civilization that was first revealed by Augustus Le Plongeon. This claim was later put forward by James Churchward. There is no scientific or archaeological data on the existence of the Nakal. But despite this, we know that a lot of fictional works have been written about him. Here we have come to the end of this discovery. If you have submitted the video, do not forget to subscribe and click on the submit button. See you next time.